Hello, and welcome to POMA Does, a podcast produced by the Pennsylvania Osteopathic Medical Association. We provide a voice for osteopathic medicine and share insights on issues important to osteopathic physicians, residents, and students, as well as those who embrace the osteopathic philosophy. POMA's mission is to promote the distinctive philosophy and practice of osteopathic medicine for our patients, our members, and the communities we serve. Thanks for tuning in.
Hi there, and welcome to the POMA Does podcast. This podcast is being hosted by the award-winning POMA District 12. I'm Lisa Witherite-Rigg, and I'm joined today with Dr. Katie Graham and Dr. Rick Johnson. And today we're going to talk about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. I'm going to let the other two panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll go back to our topic for the day. Rick, tell us where you are and what you're doing now.
I am Rick Johnson. I retired in 2020 after 30 years as a dermatologist in DuBois, Pennsylvania, and I'm still in DuBois, Pennsylvania.
I'm Katie Graham. I am a hospitalist at Penn Highlands DuBois and recently decided to switch jobs. So I guess that's why this is a great topic for me.
And I'm Witherite-Rigg. I retired in 2020, right around the time of the pandemic, and I still live in Western Pennsylvania. So when we talk about moving outside of our comfort zone, there's a lot of benefits for getting used to that little level of discomfort, because it's when we move into those areas where we're just a little bit anxious or a little bit uncertain of what may be going on. That's when we actually experience our most growth. Think about your first year of medical school and walking into the cadaver lab. Unless you were raised a child of a coroner or a undertaker, I don't know anybody that didn't feel a little bit outside of their comfort zone when they walked into that anatomy lab. And look at the growth that you experienced from that. So we're not talking about going into anatomy labs. We're talking about simple daily, everyday things that may challenge us just a little. And it's those leaps into those areas that allow us to untap maybe some potential that we didn't realize before, or help us adjust and assess what we really want in our lives and for our lives. So I'm going to ask my panelists to think about a situation where they stepped out of their comfort zone, how it made them feel and how they felt afterwards. So Rick, do you mind if we start with you?
How far back do you want to go?
You pick it.
I have three that I jotted down. One was in fifth grade, and one was about 20 years ago, and one was about 2 years ago. But in fifth grade, when you start music lessons in our school system at upstate New York, it was fifth grade. And I had a cousin that played a flute, and I was going to play flute because if he can do it, I can do it. I played it. I was not very good at it. It was probably due to the lack of practice. The band director came to me and said, "We need somebody to play the bassoon," which was totally foreign to me. So while I was learning the bassoon, they needed percussion accessories and somebody to carry the bass drum in the marching band. And then they needed somebody to play the sousaphone, and they needed somebody tuba for the concert band. So it was a transition over about 3 or 4 years that each time it was a brand new instrument, totally different. I mean, flutes, the bassoon, the percussion, the sousaphone are 4 different pieces. Music was different, so there was triple or bass, but it was interesting. So it was fun. So now I have information or experience of playing 4 or 5 or 6 different instruments. Not very well, but I enjoyed it.
Katie, can you share a time where you had to step out of your comfort zone and what that outcome was?
Yeah, one of my big uncomfortable triggers is public speaking. I was asked to give the white coat speech at the medical school I graduated from in 21, I think.
I was there with you.
Yeah, it was also the first time that I had ever used a teleprompter. So we're throwing that into the mix as well. So thankfully everything, worked out pretty well, but that was definitely a nerve-wracking situation for me.
I think one of the times that I really went outside of my comfort zone was during a mission trip. And I was asked to go to a mountain village. I was the only physician. I had a non-physician person on the mission trip with me. And I said, you know what? I'll go. When you do these mission trips, you just say yes. And Rick's nodding because I know he's served on mission trips as well. You just say yes. And I got loaded on the back of a truck, and it was about a 3-hour drive up the mountain. And I think what made me feel a little anxious, not quite to the point of panic, we'll talk about that in a second, but anxious, was when I got off of the truck, there was an armed guard that accompanied me the entire time. What I found out later that I was on the Nicaraguan border.
That's where the mission was like 6 miles from there. You went farther up in.
Yeah, I was on the Nicaraguan border, and being a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, very fair-skinned female, I was a hot commodity for the guerrillas. But, I did what I needed to do. It was very fulfilling. And when I got back and they told me just how close I was, I'm glad they didn't tell me on the head, because it would have reached that point from anxiety to panic. And it's that little window of anxiety and nervousness and just a little bit of uncertainty is where we're able to release some of our hidden capacities and abilities. Once you cross over to that panic, all the learning shuts down. And it's really important to be able to identify those boundaries and, if needed, take a step back. So, Rick, you had mentioned when you started playing one of those instruments, you weren't that good. Have you ever had an experience outside of your comfort zone, what you would consider failed? You tried something and it was just a no-go.
Can't think of anything offhand, but there are times that I tried new things and it didn't work out the way I wanted, and then I continued to push and did that. I did fine. Real simple one, I was watching it. They were doing pizzas on the barbecue grill. And by doing them on the barbecue grill, you can cut down all the fat. You can just put sliced tomatoes in your sauce and you pre-cook all your topping, and it takes 5 minutes. Well, it looked real simple on TV, but the first 3 or 4 did not come out very well. And so I finally got it figured out. But it's something that simple, but it was just moving forward.
Katie, can you think of any times that you might have considered a failure?
Yeah, I think going back to youth sports, I started out doing gymnastics, and that just wasn't my calling. I was not Simone Biles by any means.
So one of the things in some of the research that's been done is to reframe what we consider failures. And there's an acronym, FAIL, and that's first attempt in learning. So, Rick, you kind of nailed it when you were talking about the pizza on the barbecue grill. The first time was your first attempt in learning. Didn't work out so great, but it wasn't the last attempt. And there was another attempt and another attempt.
You just stop after the first time, you're not going to go very forward.
What others would consider fail, first attempt in learning and approaching it. And, with each successive attempt, you learn something from the previous attempt. So why is this important? Probably the biggest thing that we can glean from taking risks and stepping outside of our comfort zone is the ability to adapt to change. And I don't know about you guys, but all through my medical career, it has been one change after another, be it a computer system, an update on the computer. Rick, when you were logging on to record in Zoom, you had to update your Zoom to, just those small things that might be inconveniences. It didn't set you over the edge. Katie, is there any opportunities that you've seen from, going outside of your comfort zone and learning how to adapt or adjust to things?
I think just in general, unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic really taught me how to adapt, because there's so much change going on there, whether it's change in, information about the virus, change in how we treat it, change in just about everything on a daily basis. So
talk about being outside of your comfort zone and caring for patients in the hospital and then going home and trying to keep your family together. Rick, any situations you can recall where you've been able to learn how to adjust and adapt?
20 years ago, I was invited to go to Myrtle Beach with a group, and I knew one person. I knew probably half the people that went, but I knew one pretty well. He was my dentist, and I went as the comic relief because I was not a star player by any means. And I still play golf with the same group. And used to go on trip.
Are you comic relief?
Sometimes, but not very often, but much better than I was before. It was just a matter of not saying, I'm never going to figure this out. And I'd say my kids, when I took my kids golfing when they were 5 and 8, and they'd say, Dad, what do I do wrong? Well, do this. And they do it once and say, well, it didn't work. Now both of them are pretty adept at beating me. And that's over the last 20 years. So it's a progress, but it's still in the work.
So I want you both to think about what was the biggest jump you've ever made or considered to go outside of your comfort zone. And it can be either in your professional life, your personal life, how you got that courage up, that inner courage to do it.
I think making the decision to go from being a renter to owning a house.
That's huge.
Yeah, was a big one. And trying to learn everything that comes with, upkeeping a house and things like that.
That is huge. Rick, how about you?
I was just doing the same thing, but trying to buy a new house, trying to relocate to North Carolina. The realtor said, here's a great house. And you say, well, I can't. And there are people that buy it online and never look for else, and there's no way. And just having purchased the last one in 1991 and now 2024, the rules are different. The people are different. And like he said, regarding the ins and outs of, the mortgage process, which 91 was you come to town and sure, you're excited because the bank was run locally. Now it's somebody in Sacramento that's doing it and trying to figure out what the real estate agent is saying, what they mean. And each time you do it, you get a little better at it.
So I think making those big jumps, there's actually a method in breaking that down to make it not so intimidating. And you start with setting a goal, getting a house, making a plan, taking your action, identifying your boundary. And that's where you go from anxiety to panic. And it's really important to try not to cross over from that little anxiousness to true panic, because then you can't make good decisions. And then confronting your fear. And my favorite way of doing that is with a big piece of paper, the pros and the cons, what happens if I do this? What happens if I don't do this? What's the worst possible scenario? But then what's the best possible outcome? And that's you just weighing those things. So one way to get ourselves a little bit more comfortable with making those big jumps is look at the little things that we do on a regular basis, just out of routine. You wake up, you drink the certain thing in the morning, you eat this breakfast in the morning, you drive this way to work or to school or to the gym or to your doctor's appointments. When you get old like us, you get doctor's appointments. If you go on vacation, if you vacation the same place every year, those types of things, starting with changing things up just a little bit really helps step outside of the comfort zone. Go into a different restaurant that you've never been to before without, doing a bunch of research ahead of time. Changing some holiday traditions up a little bit. Keeping the old traditions, certainly, but changing things up. Just to try something new, see if it works, and see how it makes you feel. Katie, anything that you could suggest just to get a little more comfortable and avoid those ruts?
Comes with time, but I think repetition really helps. Changing one thing on, a daily basis and just continuing to do it. And then it kind of becomes a new habit or a new pattern.
Yeah. And less intimidating. Rick, what about you?
I was going to say the same idea, but realizing that in the day-to-day routine, there's not a lot of things you do or that you eventually could change that are going to be catastrophic.
Right.
You go into knowing that, if I go to a different restaurant and it's crappy, okay, I had a bad meal. It's not, going from a renter to a buyer and you get a crappy house or trying to relocate. But the day-to-day things that we do, just doing those little changes, hey, if it doesn't work, who cares?
Exactly. And that's where it's suggested people start with getting comfortable with being a little uncomfortable. We're just in a rapid world of change and getting, again, comfortable with those little areas of discomfort really do help us adapt to the change in a really good way. Thanks, guys, for joining me for this discussion. It's always a pleasure to see the two of you. Looking forward to seeing you in person. And listen to POMA Podcast. POMA Does.
So District 12.
And District 12.
District 12. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of POMA Does. Be sure to subscribe to POMA Does wherever you listen to your podcasts, and tell your friends and colleagues to tune in. Learn more about osteopathic medicine and POMA on our webpage, www.poma.org, and join the conversation on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Or email us at poma@poma.org. We'd love to hear from you. Join us next time for another edition of POMA Does.